You just press play on the Last Breath Huntcast, home of the HUNTROVERSY. We're here to entertain, educate, and engage. And in case you didn't know, you only live once. But if you do it right, once is enough. Don't waste it. You smell that, Garrett?
What are you cooking?
That's a brand new HUNTROVERSY coming in your ear holes right now. We just ripped off the Whitetail Legacy tagline, which is okay with us because those are our boys. And we are also coming in the other set of ear holes on a Monday morning. Happy Monday. It is officially turkey season, and you're listening to episode number 93 of the Last Breath Huntcast, home of the HUNTROVERSY.
Yeah, hopefully, actually, when this podcast drops,
we have a turkey dead, flopping, or two.
Yeah. I didn't think about that, but yeah, hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
If they do what they did this morning, we should be good.
And I think that they just might.
Mm.
But before we get into our controversial topic, this is the home of the HUNTROVERSY, and it is presented by Badlands Gear. So if you are interested in getting gear, any kind, tents, bino harnesses, tops, bottoms,
gears, gloves, base layers,
anything, you name it, badlandsgear.com. They got you covered for life. Unconditional lifetime warranty. This is Grant speaking with the Last Breath Huntcast and
Garrett over here.
And if you guys are listening to this podcast and you're like, man, I like the sounds of this, I like what I'm hearing, we have a brand new podcast coming out every Monday morning at 6 a.m. And that's when a brand new one hits the airwaves on Spotify, iTunes, Libsyn, etc. Our partner podcast, which we just mentioned at the beginning, the Whitetail Legacy guys, those guys drop a podcast every Wednesday at 11 a.m. So, you ready to get into it?
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a really good controversial topic tonight, and it's one Garrett and I have been talking back and forth for about a week that we got to get recorded here. That is very, it's multifaceted. There's a lot of gray areas, and I don't understand, for me, why some of those gray areas exist, but we're going to get right into it. Pen-raised game, high-fenced game. So the guiding idea behind this controversy that we were talking the other day while I forget what we were doing. We were going to pick up our deer heads. People have a huge problem with certain high fence or pen raised game, but have no problem with others. And we'll get into what some of those are in a second. So my question for you is, why do some outdoorsmen pick and choose which things to hate from a high fence? So we'll start with one that is okay, I think. I get the pulse. I get the idea that it's generally accepted by an outdoorsman.
Well, we've done it and never got.
Yeah.
We've done it a lot.
Yeah.
And it's hunting pheasants or chuckers, on a pheasant farm, if you will. They're pen raised birds. Everybody knows that. Typically the operation will have cages or pens where they'll raise thousands and thousands of pheasants. And oftentimes, actually, I think all times, on these farms, you can shoot both male and female pheasants, because and I'm not an expert on this, but I believe that when they order the eggs, obviously you can't tell if it's going to be a male or a female,
right? And
since it's these types of operations, there's no restriction on your limit of male or female or rooster or hen. So it just seems like there's we have a lot of friends that do it. Mm-hmm. In my industry of work, there's a lot of people that take clients out and do it. Mm-hmm. And it just doesn't seem to have the bad denotation that other species that are pen raised or fenced in have.
Yeah, and we've done it a couple times. So basically what happens if you got these pheasant farms or chucker farms or whatever, where a bunch of birds are living under a big net, they've got they don't have the ability to fly away, quote unquote, and they're, bred in captivity. They're hatched and then they're fed until they're, mature. And then they are collected, taken out by a worker of the pheasant farm, and they're spun probably and placed into some brush on this big walkabout where people can go and take their dogs for training, stuff like that, and they can teach them to flush birds out of these bunkers, pointing, etc., stuff like that. And it's a lot of fun. I will say that I can imagine that hunting like pheasants on a public tract of land, I have a couple buddies here in town that do it, and I've talked to them like, hey, I've went and done this. I thought it was a lot of fun, really good time, and they said, Yeah, it's a lot different doing it out there. We might get 1 or 2 pheasant in a day where, at one of these pheasant farms, as many as you pay for, as many of those birds are going to be hanging out in the field. So it's an unrealistic number comparatively to like a public land spot, but there are plenty of private land people that manage for pheasant. Like they'll let their native grasses grow up. They'll plant a lot of places that are, able to conceal a pheasant and provide cover to a pheasant or quail or whatever they're trying to raise. And they have these ultimate like pheasant farms, like think of a whitetailer, like what our farms look like for whitetail, the equivalent if somebody got bit by the pheasant or quail hunting bug that just went all out and created the ultimate pheasant quail mecca.
Well, you see this a lot in like Dakotas. They're notoriously some of the most popular and coveted pheasant hunting states, specifically South Dakota in our country. But I think also there's like a small gray area here because I know in the past, and I believe it's still current, that the Illinois DNR would actually allow private landowners to have pheasant incubators. Like they would provide them as part of this,
program,
initiative to restore the pheasant population. So I guess you're supplementing your herd
right
with exterior birds. Now the difference is that obviously they grow wild. Once they hatch, they can come and go from the incubator, but eventually they're going to be on their own. But I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I think I know the answer that my opinion is why it's okay. I think the first one is that there's a minimal trophy aspect to a pheasant, and that's just being honest. It sucks to be able to put like a bar on an animal.
Yeah.
But in the Richter scale of like, whoa, pheasants are pretty low compared to your antlered species or your horned species that are in some of the other types of operations we're going to talk about. I also think too that a pheasant's kind of like a pheasant. When you shoot a rooster, now the wild ones typically have much longer tail feathers and they might be a little bit bigger per se, but it's like, it's kind of like a bluegill. A bluegill's a bluegill. You have some really giant bluegills.
Yeah.
But even them, like, like a big bluegill doesn't really hold a flame to like a 55-inch muskie.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
that's a good analogy. That's really good.
You can catch a pound bluegill, and that's a giant bluegill, and you'd be happy as hell to catch it.
You can show your buddies and tell them, I just caught a pound bluegill.
But you're not going to get the same reaction out of the guy, buddy, that you're like, dude, I just went up to Canada and I caught this freaking 4.5 foot long muskie
that looks like a spotted eel.
Right.
With a huge mouthful of teeth.
I think, though, I love it, and I think the big reason why these types of operations exist for pheasants and all their species, but the first one is the ability to go and have the camaraderie, like you talked about your buddies that go around here and do the public land grind for upland birds. It's a struggle where, for like my bachelor party, right? You booked a hunt and all the people that I wanted to be there, we went, we had a fantastic time. We bought over 100 birds.
Yep.
We were guaranteed hot barrels. It was a fun time. And you can't have that type of, I'll call it like a guarantee when you're hunting in the wild, even on a private farm. So I'll pick this subject up later when we start talking about other species, but the training aspect is a whole other side of things too. Yeah. You being a dog owner the breed is designed for pheasant hunting. If you were to get Hank into that realm, that's the perfect opportunity for you to have a controlled setting.
Tons of practice.
With tons of practice, with guaranteed birds, that type of setting is pretty hard to be able to duplicate without these outfits that are there. So I don't know. I don't know why it doesn't have as bad of a rack, but I think the reason is that it's a low trophy scale and it's pretty budget friendly. Like some of the other operations we're going to talk about are pretty expensive, but I know like at Beck's Ridge over in Sebula, $125 get you your bird package and
your license
and the field
and
rental.
You're ready to go.
Yeah, and then once you get your a non-resident, I think, game license over in Iowa is like $35. So for $150 first time, if you don't ever go again, you can go, you're going to have pheasants to shoot at.
Yep.
And a nice field that's got beautiful habitat to walk. And it's, it's hard to beat.
So you're saying that there's no problem with pheasant, quail, small upland bird because the trophy factor is, even though that's shitty to say, the trophy factor is not there, and it's
economical. It's equitable. Like most people can do this.
Yeah.
But there are people that don't agree with it. When I was in the lumber business, there's a salesman when I worked way back in Blue Links, big outdoorsman, and I said, hey, we should do this sometime. And he absolutely said, nah, wait, man, I don't shoot pen raised birds. And that's totally fine. It didn't affect the fun that I had when I went. And,
you're like, man, you missed out.
but whatever. But there are some people that just truly, they either draw a line in the sand, and that's no quarrels with you, man. That's totally your opinion. And
everybody's entitled to one.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think there's a very, very large percentage of people that are okay with it.
I have another interesting spinoff on that. I think just because by nature the whitetail deer is the most hunted game in North America, I think that because such a small amount of people pheasant hunt, like if you actually think, and maybe this is just us being naive to it because we run in a circle full of mostly whitetail hunters, I would say, whitetail and turkey hunters. Maybe it's just because the number of people that pheasant hunt are much, much, much lower. It's a smaller percentage of the population, so you don't hear as much of a buzz about it as comparatively to when a deer law gets changed in a state, or crossbows are allowed full season for deer, how there's an uproar or something like that. You know what I mean? Just because it's affecting a smaller amount of people,
Well, whitetail deer are the number one species hunted in North America by far.
So do you think that? Do you think there's some factor of that? Like people don't get fired up about pheasants, quail, stuff like that, just because there's not as many people that A, are aware about it, and B, that actually do it or necessarily care?
I don't know, because I feel like I know a lot of guys that are deer hunter that have gone and at least done it a couple times or once.
I'm talking about like those guys that are a diehard pheasant hunter. Like that's all that they do. I don't feel like, other than Kurt, I don't feel like I know a whole lot of people like that. I know a couple.
Well, Robert Hawk, he's a huge pheasant. He goes to Dakotas and guides and everything.
But we just named two. Now think of how many deer hunters we could name, turkey hunters. Like the people that we know. It's just such a small percentage.
Here's what I'm getting at, like talking about the trophy aspect of things. Like to me, going to a pheasant farm and booking a bird hunt, it's kind of like the equivalent of us going to your parents' farm pond and stacking 50 bluegills in 30 minutes. Like you're padding the stats, man.
Right.
Compared to like us going out to like the Mississippi River and trying to catch panfish. It's a much different setting. I also think there is a small caveat to pheasant operations that like if we don't kill 100% of the birds we buy, like they can legitimately fly away and they're gone until either the next group of hunters gets them or they just survive and run off the preserve and they're on the neighboring properties. I think in other fenced operations, those animals don't have the opportunity to legitimately get away.
Yeah, that's true.
So like a pheasant, we've seen it. Like we've busted a pheasant up and it's like, that's over the highway and like we'll never see that bird again. Good luck, little buddy.
Exactly.
There's coyotes and hawks and all kinds of nasty things out here. So good luck.
Sure. That's a good point. They can't escape.
And I don't think that's really a big factor that people think about, like, oh, yeah, those birds do have a good fighting chance.
Right, right.
No, but just something to weigh in on, I think.
Okay, that's fair. I think we covered that pretty well. Let's on to our next thing. So, again, pheasant, quail, not a big problem, but something that not a lot of people...
I think the next one that we should pick up, I think we should go and scale and, like... On the meter of like
pissed offness.
Yes, the red meter. I think the next one's pigs.
Okay, all right.
Before this one.
Okay, go. Yeah, go ahead. That's probably you're right. Ranking that in front of what I was going to say, you're probably right. Go ahead.
So that like hogs, commonly known as a nuisance. And when I speak of hogs, I'm talking about the entire spectrum of like wild hogs. And us in the Midwest, there's really about the closest state that we can go to hunt feral hogs is about Oklahoma. But in Iowa, Missouri, Michigan, there's a lot of operations that offer boar hunts for hunters to book. And again, it doesn't seem to have that like bad taste in your mouth denotation to go and do it, because for us to drive to Iowa, Missouri, or Michigan is literally, depending on where it's at in the state. could be 3 hours away compared to 10, 12 in Oklahoma or 16 plus down to Texas.
So here's interesting. I'm looking at a map. I just simply typed into Google places to hunt high fence hogs near me in Illinois. So we live in the northwest corner of Illinois, relatively speaking. There's a place in northeast Iowa you can do it.
Yep.
There's a place in central Ohio you can do it. There's a place in southwest Illinois you can do it. Multiple locations in Missouri in which you could do it before you get down to like Oklahoma, and then they actually really start popping up, and then they're just all over down south. So it is very possible for, hogs to exist not in their natural habitat everywhere around the country and be hunted,
it's widely
which is
common down in like the Texas area.
Mm-hmm.
So an example being like the Partlow's grandparents own that ranch down there.
Yeah.
They catch the hogs and they actually sell them to these outfitters. They don't kill them. They'll get 10, 15, 20, whatever it is, a hog,
right? Yeah,
to give them to help them continue to
make money.
Yeah,
continue to expand, etc.
Have plenty of pigs for their clients to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Those operations obviously are designed to keep the pigs in there. So we've gone down south and hunted. We actually had a lot of fun when we went, and the fences were actually, they had like, have you guys ever seen a wasp trap that you like screw on the jar of like a honey or something or pop? Like they make these wasp traps that have like a funnel that comes in, and so the bee can go in.
Like a minnow trap.
Kind of like a minnow. That's exactly what the fences are designed like. So hogs can come in,
okay,
but the wire actually like comes together.
Oh, it opens up.
So when they stick their nose in and root in, it'll like open up, but then it's metal, so it's not spring loaded, but it comes back and they can't root their way back out.
Aha.
And like if you remember when we were down at Billy's, they had all those all the way around. Yeah. And obviously Billy's just chummed up with food, and they got all these other pigs that are in there. So any boar that's smelling a hot sow is going to find his way in there.
Sure.
On top of the ones that he brings in. But I guess what I'm getting at is I feel like the next one that's really doesn't catch much flack, or equally is not as much as pheasants, is pigs. It's kind of that's a nuisance. Again, kind of low on the trophy scale.
So my question for you, the trophy scale, it's a little bit more. Like you can, I know plenty of people that have killed a big boar with nice cutters, tusks up front. The European boiled it, or even have a taxidermy mounted. I'm not a big fan of the way they look, so I don't know if I'd do that, but I've seen it done. So the trophy aspect up a notch significantly from pheasants, but pheasants and quail, etc., they're not seen as a nuisance, where pigs are seen as a nuisance. So that'd be like the equivalent of us having like a high fence coyote hunt is what you're saying. So the fact that people aren't upset by hogs is because it's typically seen as a varmint or a nuisance. Is that what you think? There's not a lot of backlash because of?
Maybe, kind of. I just think it's like lower on the trophy scale. And again, I think it, and this is just my opinion, I think it has a some aspect to like the heatometer to be, again, the budget. We've got places down in Texas like Hog Wild Adventures. We've hunted there with Billy Reeves. Good time. It's not lavish conditions, but you're going to kill pigs. Guarantee it. I think it's like $450 or $500 for a 2.5 day hunt, half a day and 2 nights, I think. And, it's a lot of guys can afford that, especially if you plan it.
Yeah.
Again, when we get into some of these other species, that 500 jumps up really fast. I mean, really fast, like almost instantly.
Multiplier of 10.
So again, I don't know if the cost involved has something to do with
the hatred from the outside.
I don't know. There's some commonalities there with the lower cost to the lower care.
Yeah.
And maybe it affects it, maybe it doesn't. That's just one thing that I'm observing.
Mm-hmm.
And even again, like I looked up an operation up in Michigan. They had Russian boars, and they were giant. Like they're like 450 pounds. I mean, they were massive. And even them, they were like around like $1,000 for one pig. Now, as an absolute giant, we never shot anything close to that size. But I mean, it's cheaper than any fair chase whitetail hunt that you'd be able to find, or a lot of other options that are really out there. So I don't know. I think that's the next one to go from pheasant hunting is hog hunting. A majority of the operations are fenced operations where the pigs really, if they escape, it's a rarity. They're designed to keep them in there, so you have it's a target-rich environment, and it just doesn't seem to have much flack. Especially if you go down south, even if you do it like I said, I know some friends that went to the Iowa operation, had a great time. Had a fantastic time, you know? And the reason why they went there is because they're like, well, it's the same exact thing. If I drive like 16 hours south, why don't I just go
45 minutes northwest?
Yeah, not even.
Sure.
Like 2 hours.
Mm-hmm. Okay, working our way up the scale here, I think the next logical place for us to go for it, since we're kind of on the Texas thing, especially with hogs, Southwest down there, exotics.
So that's what I was going to say.
So exotic game, sometimes, there are exotics that are brought down to Texas that are, low fence or no fence at all. I mean, there are things I've seen, watching some episodes of Meat Eater the other night. I forget what they called this thing, but it kind of looked like a cow. And Stephen Ranella was kind of explaining that it's not necessarily so much hunting, it's more so killing. They're just everywhere down there just because these exotics have been brought over from other places and then they escaped and the native,
naturalized.
Yeah,
right?
They've been naturalized. The herd is now much larger and it's, sustainable just because the climate in Texas is very similar to where those game were taken from, is why they're brought to Texas in the first place. Mm-hmm. For the same reason why we're not going to be seeing any eland walking around Illinois when it's -20 out.
Yeah.
Texas is much more mirroring of their natural habitat taken from Africa or whatever, typically from Africa though.
Dry and hot. Yep.
Uh-huh. And so we're talking about exotic game. Now the price tag, like you're pointing out, is definitely going up.
Mm-hmm.
So exotics being, we've seen,
there's a wide spectrum. You've got
there's
rams,
tons of stuff.
African species. You've got like New Zealand species, fallow deer, four-horned rams, even stag are available down in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I feel like there's not near as much backlash for some of the people to decide to go and do that. And again, I mean, I think there's a large play in people who decide to do that is, okay, it's cheaper for me to go hunt a gemsbok down on a Texas ranch than it is for me to fly to Africa and go and do the safari over there, mm-hmm. especially in returning your game home.
Right.
So again, do I know why? I don't know, but I know that it's not as expensive as some of the other things that we will talk about. And I don't know. I don't know why there isn't as much heat, and mostly more times than not, and this is just in the group of people that I surround myself or follow, I feel like I see more of the ram species, mm-hmm. Corsican rams, or like I said, the four-horned rams, which are crazy. If you've ever seen them, they literally have four horns coming out of their head.
Whoa.
Like axis deer is another one that's really popular down in Texas. I see a lot of.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, I won't rule it out. I would love to go down there and shoot an axis deer.
And I think
and the reason being is because of the economicability of it.
Yeah.
There's a native herd in Hawaii, but I got to fly to Hawaii.
Yeah.
And then I got to try to figure out how to get it back. There's no chance in me ever bringing the meat back. I can drive to Texas though.
Yeah. And I think a lot of outdoorsmen are leery of international travel just because of what it entails. Like for me to go like on my honeymoon to Mexico or whatever, all right, so they lost my bag. Nobody's going to die here. But when you're going to a different country that's not like touching the United States, like when you're going across a sea for 10 or 12 hours and you're going to Africa, I mean, there's an extreme amount of things that could go wrong. Like the government over in Africa, much different than the one in the United States, much different than the one in Mexico or whatever. Like what happens if your weapon get lost? What happens if that gets...
You're not getting it back.
You're not getting it back. What happens if it gets seized at the airport just because somebody wants to? Because that's a law there. You know what I mean? Like there are a lot of things that could go wrong there, and we've heard of a couple things going wrong mm-hmm. on longer trips like mm-hmm. that. And I feel like it's not necessarily the people that are going down to Texas are economically afraid. It's just like, man, that's a lot of potential headache. And if I want to kill this animal, and if it's like at the top of my bucket list, like you said, if Texas is just a hop, skip, and a jump, and you're traveling domestically to Texas from some other spot in the United States, because majority of the people that are listening to this podcast that are going to relate to what we're talking about, they're United States residents anyway. So I feel like it's just much more attainable, like you said. So the exotic species, which one do you think, in your opinion, just because we have talked about pheasants and quail, but we've named them, and we have talked about hogs and we've named them, but what game do you think you would draw the line at on a Texas exotic to be like, nah, I'm not interested in hunting that? Or which one do you think gets the most uproar that's killed in Texas, in your opinion?
So in my opinion, I think we're talking about the heatometer here.
The heatometer.
I feel like that axis deer and the ram species, the ram category, seem to be the most mild. And then as you kind of work your way into the African exotics is where you start seeing that factor come into play. But I also feel like that factor would come into play regardless. So talking about like an African antelope or a gemsbok or a kudu, those are going to be
an impala.
lower on the scale. But when you get into some of the more prestigious African game, giraffes, zebras, etc., I feel like you get more of that backlash. And I think that backlash would be probably matched with people hunting them in Africa as well, just because of the species, regardless of where it's at.
It's a heart-felt species.
Yeah, you know, it's on an animal cracker, man. You can't kill it.
Right.
Some people believe. So it's like that's where I think it is. And I also think, though, that as you get into the category of prestigious African game, the price rises quite a bit. Like going and shooting a Corsican ram is pretty budget-friendly. You know, and I'm not talking about a Dall sheep. I'm talking about rams here. You know, like that's pretty. I mean, that a lot of guys tack it on to their hog hunts because you see them on the ranges. You know, and as you get into the African game again, like the smaller horned species are pretty economical. When you get into the larger and the, like I said, more prestigious, the trophy aspect, and I hate to say that, but we have to. It rises in price range very quickly. Like the curve starts to go up really high on that African list.
And I would imagine just tying into the budget side of things on the African exotics, especially like the ones that are very prestigious, like you're talking about there. I mean, an outfitter in Texas probably isn't going to have a herd of giraffes running around.
No.
It's probably like a giraffe, maybe two, and then it's like, hey, I have a giraffe. Would you like to kill it? And at that point, people are like, okay, this is a giraffe by itself. It can't escape in Texas somewhere, not in its native habitat.
Oftentimes, these operations, when somebody books a hunt, they'll actually bring the species in, like legitimately order it. I mean, I don't know what the catalog looks like, but
right,
you know, I think following that and kind of in there is that is the North American bison. You know, very, very, very few states you can hunt them, and it's a very limited draw tag. But there's a lot of places you can go and hunt a bison. It's a penned animal, but I feel like, again, I don't know how different the hunt would be in the wild compared to a pen on a bison. With my experience, I've been out to South Dakota and the Black Hills numerous times, and the bison there, now they get hunted. Custer State Park allows people to hunt them. It's a $5,000 tag, or it was at the time when we were looking there. And like you, dude, you could walk right up to them. I mean, they're within reason. I would never touch one.
Right.
But I mean, I don't know.
To kill one with a gun, it would be like
a bow. I mean, I don't, you know, it's like,
oh, that close?
Oh, like, yeah. Oh, yeah. Jesus. That close. Like, close that I was like taking pictures, and I'm like, I'm not going to get any closer because I'm breaking my
you do have some pictures
comfort
of that
zone
when you got way close.
Yeah. Jeff was like, dude, you're getting way too, I was like sub 30.
Yeah.
And like at that point, man, I'm being stupid, you know, for the picture.
Yeah.
It's like,
right. Yeah.
If this dude wanted to, I'm crumpled.
Yeah. He's going to murder you.
So I don't know. I don't feel like there would be that much of a difference on that hunt if you drew a Custer State Park tag.
I could see why a ram hunter or a goat hunter would get real fired up about a Texas-like species just because of how freaking demanding it is to go and kill a ram or something, or a sheep in its natural habitat. Like the expense, the travel, where they live, extremely demanding. Like those deep backcountry hunts when they're staying above like tree line and camping on rocks and stuff, like those are some rugged hunts. Like there's a very small amount of hunters that could actually physically do that.
Right.
So I could see why they would get some more backlash for that, just because it's like, all right, it's in a pen, it's flat, it's not on a mountain, it's not in its natural habitat, etc. So maybe that's why there's a little bit more of an uproar about
that's
about
cheap.
that.
You know, that's
right.
that's a different realm, and again, that's a different realm of cost as well. So
right.
I don't know why, but there's a curve that follows like the heatometer with the cost, and getting into the next one, which I think you're going to bring up.
Yep. Now we're going to get pretty hot. Not roasting fiery.
Are you going to go
blazing pits
like
of hell
Peru,
hot yet.
New Zealand?
Yep. We're going to go with red stag now. So, lots and lots and lots of places offer red stag hunts, international places. So this is an opportunity to take, your buddy, your wife, your significant other, whatever, on an incredible vacation to an incredible location. New Zealand,
Peru, yep.
Argentina, to hunt a red stag, right? Yet nearly every single red stag hunt available is virtually a high fenced red stag hunt. But again, it's not seen as quite the big problem. I feel like it's again, brushed under the rug. And maybe, again, because of what you've said, there's just a small amount of people that are willing to travel internationally and pay for the hunt, because now we're talking about a pretty damn expensive hunt. We're talking about
$5,000 plus.
Yeah,
$5,000 for an entry level.
Yeah, plus your airfare. I mean, you're looking at a cool $9,000 after you get there, go back,
bring it
ship
home.
your stuff,
Yeah.
everything.
Yep.
All intents and purposes, $9,000 is a lot of freaking cash, a
yeah.
lot of money. So when you're stepping into this, there's a much smaller percentage of average everyday hunters that could afford this. So do you think that is why? Again, there's not quite as much heat, or there's not quite as much hatred for the red stag, or what's your opinion on this? Do you think there's quite a bit, or what do you think?
So here's my opinion. I don't think there's a lot of controversy around this topic for two main reasons. My first main reason is that I don't think a lot of people realize that most of these operations are high fence. Like just talking to our family members, like we were talking about how not necessarily economical, but when you compare apples to apples, like when you compare it to a quality elk hunt domestically,
yeah,
and you look at opportunity rates provided by said outfitters, it's like, man, these guys are boasting 100% success rate with rifles, these New Zealand guys, and there's, I don't know any like fair chase elk places that have this type of statistic,
right, yeah.
And it's almost the same cost. You don't need to draw a tag. It's like, this is kind of a good option. And they're like, wait, they're high fence? I'm like, yeah, that's why
those numbers are that.
They're tiered within the size and the caliber, and that's why they can offer these things. And I think that high fence has this, some people have this concept that it's a 20-acre pen. I mean, a majority of these ranches, especially these New Zealand operations, are huge.
Tens, if not hundreds of thousands.
Specifically, New Zealand is almost exclusively privately owned ground. And that's why it's kind of cultivated this scenario, is because the landowners, there's no seasons. There's no tags.
Yep.
The landowners completely regulate their herds. And obviously, they've figured out that there's a large opportunity here.
Demand. It's a business. It's viable business.
So
yeah.
there's an incentive for them to have a healthy herd, to grow big bulls, and to keep it going, so that they don't overharvest and that they take the runs that they're mature. I mean, they've got it figured out over there. Mm-hmm. It's just regulated privately. It'd be like, if Illinois regulated it, or landowners in the United States regulated their own ground, I don't think it would go as swimmingly, just because it's so cut up. But, when you've got 100, 200, 300,000 acre ranches over there, it's pretty easy to be able to manage your herd. So the reason one is, I think
not a lot of people know ignorance.
And I think the second one is that it's been conditioned. It's common, like when you think of a New Zealand red stag, you think of a giant animal, like big crowns, dark horns.
Yeah, you're right.
When
nobody really knows what a little stag looks
what
like.
a fair chase stag looks like, which looks really like a 210, 230 inch elk. Honestly, that's what they look like. It looks like a raghorn 5-point elk, like a native Irish, New Zealand, South American red stag. That's what they look like. Mm-hmm. So I think that if everybody, when thought of whitetails, thought of a 250 inch, what you would think of like a high fence, quote unquote, whitetail, Like if that's what everybody thought a whitetail was, then it wouldn't be so shocking when you saw it. But the pictures that you constantly see floating around on
or
social
just
media,
giant stags.
yeah, they're huge,
absolutely huge.
and that's the ones that you go to hunt.
Yeah,
right. It's like
so
you combine the lack of knowledge that they are, fence operations with the conditioning of they're all huge. You have kind of this blissful ignorance of the situation.
Yeah, going back to our most recent Huntroversy, we had 2 episodes ago about when is too early to start a youth into hunting. If you condition a kid to killing a big buck every time, then all they're going to know is killing a big buck. They've become an essential trigger man. Well, like you said, if the only pictures floating around of a red stag are just giant red stag, nobody knows any different. Everybody's just like, whoa, red stag are huge, way bigger than elk.
Right.
Holy smokes. He shot a 32-point red stag, and this one was 26. In actuality, when a free-range red stag is... I have seen hardly any of those, to your point, floating through the social media airwaves, great answers on that one. 2 for 2.
And I think the reason being is that it's just like high fence situations with other ungulate species. Like these landowners, I mean, they supplement for antler growth. Yes. It's not like, not only is the herd genetically great because they've created it that way, but I mean they just it'd be like if we had optimized. No limitations to mineral supplementation. Like it's proven that the ability for this animal to uptake that nutrients improves antler growth, just like human supplementation. If you take creatine, it allows you to grow bigger muscles. I mean, it's right. That's the way it is. So that's my 2 reasons why I think it's not as frowned upon to go and do those types of things. Okay,
so let me back up for a second. Which do you think is more highly frowned upon? And we're not saying, for the record, I want to say that we do not believe that these things are wrong. It's just something that I've noticed, and
hopefully one day go shoot a red stag.
Right. This is just something that I've noticed and observed that there's certain pen raised game that people just really dig at, and then there's certain things that are pen raised that people don't. And for whatever reason, that's what we're trying to unpack here. It's not that we have an issue with any of these or whatever. If you want to go hunt something in my fence, cool, do it. If you want to go hunt a pen raised animal, cool, do it. But there are certain people that get more fired up about ones rather than another. So now we're going deep into the bowels of hell. We're about to turn the heatometer up way high.
Yeah, because it's like it's not no little slight curve. It like hits a bump and then
boing. Yeah, it's
break it off.
Yeah, we're about to enter the 40 to 50% meat of the bell curve here, and that is deer, mule deer, elk. And whenever those words come up in front of high fence, pen raised, etc., there is a high amount of outrage. There's a high amount of controversy surrounding that. I see it very frequently.
Lots of shade.
Lots of shade will happen. Like I saw the Outdoor Channel share a post. It would have been about 6 months ago. There's a woman that shot one with a crossbow down in Texas, and it was an absolute giant. It was like a 260-inch whitetail. And one of the very first comments on there, to his point, was a I thought kind of a jackass comment, but I thought he was right. And the basic gist of the comment was, if you expect to post something like this on here and it not draw controversy, then you guys must be morons. Just because it is very alarming. Like when you see a 250-inch deer that's visibly pen raised, it's alarming. Mule deer, elk, it's alarming. Like when you see that, just because it's so against what your eyes see every year as you're hunting muleys, elk, deer, whatever popular the top 3 ungulate species are in North America, right? So there's a huge amount of controversy. So let's talk about deer.
I think the next one in the scale is actually elk. And my reason being for that, why it doesn't have as much heat as whitetail, is because there's a lot less people that have the ability to hunt elk. Like we talked about at the very beginning.
Via location and just funds, money.
Well, think about there's a small herd in Pennsylvania and small herd in Kentucky and small herd in Michigan and some other states that are around there. But I mean, for most intents and purposes, the majority of places that you go to elk hunt is going to be in the western state. So the percentage of hunters that have the ability to hunt elk compared to whitetails is drastically smaller.
Yeah.
So that's why I just, because to me, when I see an elk on my feed, I think every one of them's huge.
Yeah, right.
Not just the pen raised ones or the high fence ones. Like because I like the hashtag bull elk. Like when I see them, like, God damn, that's a big bull. God damn, that's a big bull. But
Yep.
it could be 330 or it could be 400. They're all big.
Yeah.
But a whitetail is easy for me to like see the difference between damn, that's a nice deer, and damn, that is no way a native deer.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for the same factor, why like red stag, I'm conditioned that they're all huge. I think all elk
To you look big.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think there's a reason why it's not so as frowned upon as the deer. I think deer takes the cake.
Not as many people see them.
Correct. Mm-hmm. But I think that I just think that it's in that category of species that is really coveted by outdoorsmen, and that's why there's a reason there. And I also think that the reason why it jumps up on the Richter scale for hotness is because of a higher percentage of hunters have the ability to hunt them free range, rather than not. Because there's nobody in America that can hunt stag free range. So there is none of that argument that you did it the easy way out, because none of us can do it that way.
That's a great point.
But when you jump into these domestic species, now you have like what you were talking about with the sheep earlier, like the guys that go and grind it out and get it done on the mountainside, which most elk operations are in the mountains, barring a few southern operations. I mean, you're still hunting in their terrain, but it's just, you're in a pen, like a 10, 20, 50,000 acre pen.
So we're thinking that one of the reasons that these animals are highly controversial, especially as we draw towards the elk and the deer here, are because certain groups within that, the crazy fan club, like you and me, we're in the whitetail club. Like, it's cool that you went out and killed an elk, but the number of elk that we're going to kill in our lifetime is going to be such a minute percentage compared to whitetails if we stay and live in Illinois, just because that's all we can hunt. So
I think, going on to the flip side, the reasoning behind specifically elk is a couple different factors. If you look at most of these operations and you compare them to your cost of a good outfitter, there are some that are cheaper,
right. Yeah.
I mean, some of these operations have a very respectable elk that's, like your entry level elk, quote unquote, that is quite a bit cheaper than some of these very coveted outfitters out west that don't have as high of opportunity or success rates. So I think that there's a reason there. Like, if you want to go elk hunting and you have a limited budget, you have the ability to do it. I think the other big reason is the tag system. Obviously these pens, you don't need to draw a tag to hunt, so you can kind of hunt according to your schedule. And
it's efficient. No point wasting, none of that.
I think there's two other factors. The other one is like us, a lot of times we're different, because like if you draw a tag and I go and film you, I get to share that same experience.
Right.
A lot of people don't have the love of the camera that the 8 of us do. So like, let's say your brother and your dad all want to go on an elk hunt, and you want to go in a really good outfitter, you're okay with spending the money. Well, the chances of you all three drawing a tag for the same unit the same year is very slim, being non-residents.
Right,
unless you've planned this hunt for like 10 years and you all got a bank.
You're all loaded with points.
So it allows groups opportunities to go do that experience. And then the last one, I think, is the biggest. The biggest reason is that you'll have guys that have went out and hunted 2, 3, 5, 10 times, and spent the money or grinded on public and never killed one, and now they're ready to just get one down.
Yeah.
I think that's a big reason why guys kind of look at these operations, and most of them are pretty large. There's very few that I think are small in the scale of things.
I think the scale of difficulty in killing all the things that we're talking about too also has a value to play here, just for the same reason as you're bringing up the money. That's an interesting point. But a pheasant, most outdoorsmen can chuck a couple 12-gauge shells down a shotgun tube and blast a pheasant that's kind of drifting up above them 10, 15, 20 yards. Most people can physically kill a hog most people could physically kill an exotic in a pen. Most people could physically kill an exotic stag, but less people. But elk, especially when we're talking about that, I mean, there's plenty of statistics. I mean, Corey Jacobson mentions it all the time that less than 10% of elk hunters that draw tags actually end up filling a tag.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so because that game is so difficult to kill in and of itself on, low fence, not high fence land, it's, there's certain groups that feel so shortchanged. Like,
bingo. That's what I think it is, because the guys that get it done,
they're like, man, you're taking the easy way out big time. You're a coward. You're a pussy, whatever, what have you.
Because, especially the consistent killers of elk.
Yeah, like a Corey Jacobson.
Like Corey,
that kills 1 or 2 bulls every year.
Gun or bow, don't care. Like, getting it done with a gun is freaking hard. Like, you can't cheat the mountain. We said that before.
Yeah.
And that's where I think for elk the big stem comes from, because the guys that put in the work, and it's a much different type of work than whitetails, like the physical body labor of getting it done out there that's no easy task.
Yeah, you're in an elite club if you can go kill an elk on public land
with a
bow or with a gun, but especially with a bow. Like, you were a incredible hunter.
Especially like if you're one of those guys that kill mature elk year after year.
Yeah.
And
you're very talented at what you do.
Super talented. And I'll tell you that firsthand. I think that's where the big issue comes from, because that, a smaller percentage of people that quote unquote get lucky out west it's tiny compared to the people. And this is not to put any hunter down, but everybody knows somebody that's gotten lucky when they're whitetail hunting. Like, how the fuck did that guy kill that deer? Jesus Christ, you kidding me? That's the story. He was, talking on the phone to his girlfriend.
He was running 30 minutes late, got in the blind 10 minutes after legal time, and then he just came rumbling by, and then he shot him, and that's it.
Jesus Christ, why can't I ever get that lucky? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Those stories are more common in the whitetail woods than they are out on the elk mountains. Mm-hmm. So I think that's why the Richter scale of heat has moved so much, because the guys that do get it done, they invest a lot. And not saying the whitetail hunters don't, it's just a different type of investment. You
ready to tackle the Holy Trinity now?
Yeah.
Okay, whitetails. Based upon the effort, I would say, physically, a whitetail hunter does not have to be in the same shape that an elk hunter does. And I think, like we talked about earlier, a whitetail is an easier animal to kill than an elk. It's smaller. The terrain that it lives in is much more easy on the body. And, relatively speaking, you can manipulate the habitat that a whitetail lives in. That's why TSI, that's why food plot, all these projects and things that whitetail hunters do that are popping up and surfacing, that's why they exist, is to manipulate, to raise your chances. Like, you're not going to go hinge cut the north side of the south side of a peak on public in Wyoming. Like,
I wouldn't advise it. Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? So you can't manipulate elk habitat. So more people, number one, can hunt whitetails. And that's why I think there's the most uproar about it, is just because there's the most eyeballs, there's the most people in that community. For the same reason why the most people hate rage broadheads, is because rage for years and years and years and years and years, and still continues to be one of the most prolific 2-blade expandable broadheads on the market. So just because by virtue of more people using it, the sample size is larger, therefore more people will be drawn to the controversy of it. And like you said, for us, we don't see elk every day, but we can see whitetails, for about 4 months of the year, and we know what a whitetail looks like that's not raised in a pen versus is, and there's a very stark difference there.
Typically.
So why do you think, as we've moved our way through here, because there's certain animals that not a lot of people really care about if they're in a pen or not, but then whitetails, it is a bloodbath. If you kill a high fence whitetail deer and you put that on social media somewhere, prepare to be ripped to shreds, essentially.
So I'll give it to you.
So go ahead.
I think a couple factors. The first one is just like you said. I'll reiterate this, that more people, more hunters than any other sect hunt whitetails, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the primary reason. I think the secondary reason is that, looking at elk comparatively to whitetails, most hunters have the ability to hunt whitetails. Most hunters don't have the ability to hunt elk, right? So that if somebody goes on a high fence hunt for elk and they argue the fact like, man, I can't hunt them all the time. Like it is what it is. That's why I went on it.
Right. Yeah.
Most whitetail hunters can't say that. You know what I mean? Unless you live, I don't even know where you'd live where you couldn't hunt a whitetail. You know what I mean? There's few places in the United States
there's
couldn't.
Probably only a couple states if
I'm
there
trying
is
to
any.
think.
I'm trying to think of. I mean, they're
maybe
all
Alaska?
They're all over the East Coast. I mean, do they have whitetails in like
Maine?
California? Not whitetails, but they have blacktail out there.
Correct.
So I mean, some kind of deer.
So I'm getting
virtually
at
in every state
is that,
like you said.
Yeah. So the ability to hunt that species is virtually accessible anywhere.
Yes.
Okay. So I think there's a reason for saying like, why didn't you just go hunt XYZ? And then the other reason is that for some reason, and it's maybe just because what floats around, but I feel like when people go and hunt high fence whitetails, they don't go for like the 150s.
Right.
Or like a solid buck.
Yeah.
They go for like the uber crazy mega giant, that are just, they look so big, they're
43 scorable
unnatural.
points, like
so I think
bananas.
that alludes to it, right? And again, maybe it's talking about when I was bringing up red stag, like everybody goes and shoots the big ones. So we're conditioned to seeing that, but
a common whitetail is like 125, 130.
Common nice big buck. A big buck is like the 140 to 150s, and then the big giant ones are like 170 to 200, and then you have the rare and few exceptional that break that barrier.
Yeah.
But it's like,
good point.
When you see these high fence operations, and I mean majority of the pictures that you see are just they're over the top big. I feel like you have a way less percentage. Like if that girl that shot the crossbow, that example you're using, if she would have shot like a mid 115 and posted it, the question of whether it would have been a ranch buck or not would have been minimal.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You know what I mean? And
so what you're saying is,
but what I'm also getting at though too is if you look at the price list, talking about that, the cost. I mean, elk is, if you look at an elk hunt entry level, like those fence hunts, they start off at like 5,500 and then they go way high. I mean, real high, like up into the 20,000s.
Sure.
But whitetails is the same thing and go even further. Like when you look at some of these hunts, like they offer 300-inch whitetails. That's like a $40,000 whitetail.
Gosh.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so obviously it's following that kind of trend as you reach that capacity of like unokayedness. Right. That's not even a word.
Yeah, it's okay.
But it's like that's where it's at, and it's crazy. And I don't know. I feel like it's because people, when they go to these operations, they go in there for something, and maybe that's why they go. It's for something that they can't hunt in the wild. They can't get naturally.
Right.
That's why they go there.
Yeah. Other than the Brewster buck, like I've,
correct.
A deer that gets over like 260. I mean, there's
200. 200 is.
I'm talking like the biggest freaking nasty, deer you can think of. Like I've heard of, we have relatives that have killed 200-inch deer. There are plenty of people in our area in Illinois. We could name a couple of them that have killed deer between like 210 and 230. I mean, one was killed just this year, 15 minutes away from your house. So it was 242.
Yeah.
That's a fucking huge deer.
Right.
Like huge, non-pen raised, completely natural, 240. But once you get above that, like mark that is just so wildly unattainable, I feel like you said, it draws a red flag. And then it's just, so what you're telling me is what we got to do is start saving a little bit of money and go and start thumping 140s, 150s, and 160s in some pens, huh?
It would be a lot less suspicious,
right,
than adding a couple 100 inches.
Yes, and that was sarcasm, by the way. No, we're not going to do that. But that's that. It's just interesting food for thought because I feel,
and I think the reason why we wouldn't do that is because we have the ability to do that
here
in
our backyard.
And so that's why, again, I think most people have an issue with is because a lot of people have the ability to hunt those types of animals, but inversely, like I was saying, the pictures that you see, they get a lot of
hate. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, they're not the deer that you can hunt around here.
Right. They're just
playing so far
above the rim that It's visibly a red flag. And there are people, and this is an interesting one, and I think of even just the differences in whitetail sizes per state. Like, we're blessed to be in an air quote big buck state, right?
Yeah.
Illinois, Iowa, the top two, maybe Kansas thrown in there as well. Missouri, another real big buck state. Yeah. But there's been a couple comments like on the big ones. I'm talking like the 6 booners that we've been able to kill. There's been people comment before like, what pen did you shoot that out of? Especially like with Matt and his drop tine deer, because a drop tine is not very common. And a deer with the 170-inch frame, like the ones that Matt has, with the drop tine, look like they could potentially, be like, whoa, that's suspicious. Like a guy that's hunting, in like South Carolina or Alabama or Georgia or something where it takes years and years and years to grow a 120 or a 130, they see, the deer Matt shot 2 years ago with a freaking 16-inch hammer-handled drop tine on him with a 170 frame, like freaking A. That's a pen-raised deer to them because it's so largely unattainable, like you said. So I thought we covered that pretty well. Any other thoughts before we wrap it up?
No, I mean, I don't know. I don't know. There's just a lot of heat. I think there always will be. And there's nothing you can do about it. I guess you hunt, and if you go on one of them, just understand that you might have a chance to get backlash from people, and you got to swallow that when you go. I mean,
right.
I said it on here, like, I hope I have an opportunity to go hunt red stag. Like, I would go down to Texas and hunt some of those exotics.
Yeah.
I mean, I would do it.
Yeah, right.
I want to go hunt a stag. I want to go shoot a fallow deer. I want to go shoot an axis deer. And I don't know if that makes me a lesser hunter or not, because I'd be doing it in fenced operations.
Right.
But I don't know.
I think it just makes you realistically like appreciative and actually cognizant of the fact that time is a resource, and it's a resource that a lot of hunters in the middle class and blue collar guys just don't have. I mean,
what's
we've talked about it a million times. Like,
I don't know of many places you can go hunt a high fenced moose.
Yeah, that's a good. I don't know.
Or like a caribou. Those are like a couple species that are like dreams of mine, aspirations of mine. But I don't even think you can do it. I'm sure somewhere some place offers it.
I'll be freaking dang. Well, you can. There's some hunting preserves here, and it's apparently, there's a couple of them. You can hunt it. Yep. You can hunt a high fence, a couple. We could hunt a high fence moose in about an hour and a half south of Louisville.
See, like, that would totally just feel, it wouldn't even feel right.
Going to Kentucky to kill moose.
Yeah, it's like, no. Like, my mind of like moose hunting is like Alaska, float plane.
The bush.
You fly in and like you take a boat down the river.
Yep.
And you can get on.
Yeah, that nostalgic Alaskan feel.
Yeah, that's like it. Same thing with caribou. Like, you go up there and you got the huge herds. And
right. Yeah, it's snow covered. It's a huge wide expanse. It wouldn't feel the same way killing a caribou like on the backside of a flat cornfield in Iowa.
Yeah.
Be kind of like, what the hell is this?
Yeah.
It wouldn't feel right.
No.
Okay. Well, getting into some would you rathers. Here we go. Buckle up. We're about to go into the would you rather zone. And the first question I want to know is, would you rather shoot a turkey at 50 yards with a gun or 40 yards with your bow?
40 yards with a bow.
First turkey of the year. You ready to make a 40-yard poke at the gobbler, huh?
Oh, yeah, I'd rather do that.
Yep, okay. Would you rather eat a turkey breast just grilled up or a turkey breast kebab?
Kebab.
Why is that?
Kebabs are awesome.
And
I would marinate that turkey, those chunks of turkey breast in like teriyaki. Make a big old fire-ass kebab.
Kebab's just a good medley of flavor, too. Got some spice, got some sweet. You can put mushrooms on it, peppers, everything. I put some pineapple. Yeah, some pineapple on there. Man, that's really tasty when
especially
you do that.
If you're doing like teriyaki.
Yeah, fuck yeah. I'm ready to do that. That's going to be good. On Monday, right when
we're
talking about this podcast, man.
Like, we'll keep a cup, like one turkey breast, two turkey breasts, and do something like that. But most of it we grind, man.
Yeah. Plant clover or turnips this year. I know what we're planting. We're planting both. But if you had to choose clover or turnips, which one would you plant?
Clover.
Why?
So
Why?
if you're listening and you're thinking about food plotting, clover is something that is a lot longer of a food plot, as far as the annual perspective goes. He's going to be more well, I'm getting there, but as attractiveness, it's going to have attractiveness longer in the season, where turnips has a very
short
seasonal
window.
And also what you're talking about is clovers are perennial. So if you have limited access to equipment, once you get your seed bed right and you plant it correctly, now all you have to do is maintain it, which is spray it, maybe, and mow it, maybe. The last aspect is that if you ever have aspirations to change or grow that food plot, clover is a legume. It puts nitrogen into the soil, so it's not going to deteriorate the soil conditions that you have, where like a lot of your bulbed species and other things are actually going to pull a lot of nitrogen, which you would need to re-input into the ground if you're going to plant something else.
That's a good point. And we planted some clover last year. It's absolutely incredible. But you know who the clover farmers of the year are? Austin and Clark. 2 years ago when they Austin was like, I got to go cut my clover plot. I'm talking about my buddy Austin Meyer and Clark Cummings. Man, those guys grow some good-looking clover down there. And once you get it established and you just at the point where you're mowing it and killing it off, or spraying it for weeds or something like that for broadleaf, it's freaking awesome.
Yeah,
grass.
and
Sorry, don't spray your clover with broadleaf killer.
Well, there are some out there that you can use,
that are
but
resistant.
No, like once you get that bed, that mat thick, really you don't even need to spray anymore.
Yeah, it's not going to get any competition.
Out.
Yeah. Number 4. Would you rather hunt out of a blind or a stand? We're talking about deer here during late season. By the way, the temperature is 30 degrees on the button.
Stand. That pyre suit's going to keep me warm in that freaking...
I'm going to keep dropping the temperature on you and see when you flop over. 25.
Stand.
20.
Stand.
15.
Stand.
10.
Stand.
5.
Stand.
5.
Are you
0?
0 would be the defining factor, where I would go to a blind to get out of the wind.
Okay.
But I'm telling you, man, after...
How about 0 and no wind? Just 0 ambient. It's fucking cold. It's cold.
That's cold.
But for a 3-hour sit, we've done that a cajillion times.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of like think about our sponsor we just talked about.
Yeah.
But for the last 4 months,
Yeah, underwarmer.
Like that thing is gonna be a game changer, dude. I'm thinking like, okay, I've got underwarmer on. If they came out with a leg version of that, then definitely.
Yeah, right.
But I'm just so thoroughly impressed with the heat holding ability of the pyre suit. 5 degrees, no brainer. Yeah. I want to be in the stand. I want to have that freedom, that mobility.
That's still my favorite piece of camo I've ever owned, bar none, by far.
But the wind chill is a huge factor. That blind, being able to get out of the wind, plays a big role in your comfort and ability to hunt longer.
Yep. But I think we would both rather agree that I would rather hunt out of a stand for the ability to swing my bow. Like the shot, I would rather shoot out of a stand than a blind. In my opinion, just like the reasons
with
why
a bow, for sure.
During the rut, we would rather be in a stand than a blind, even though a blind might be in a great location. So, number 5, would you rather kill your next buck over a scrape or a water hole?
Scrape.
And we're going to have that was quick. Not a water hole?
I mean, it'd be cool, man, but scrape hunting's like my freaking...
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a lot of fun. We're getting pretty good at it.
Yeah.
Okay. Shoot or pass. A turkey with a full fan, but there is no visible beard and no visible spurs. You get a bit of time to glass him up. He's timid. He's coming in slow.
I'm shooting him.
Okay, full fan, getting it. This is I thought this was the hardest one in the spread. This took me a lot of time to come up with. So it's a 10-pointer. Mainframe. He's half racked. Air quote. Not completely half, though. He's a little over half. And I'll tell you what's on the other side, the air quote broken side. The other side has a brow, G2, and a 7-inch drop tine. That's all that's on there. Oh, what?
You had me as soon as he's a half rack. I'm not shooting that deer.
Even though he has a brow, a G2, and a 7-inch drop coming off there. So all you're missing though is your 3 and your 4 and the end of your main.
I know.
Oh, dude. That's a tough
Wayne
pass.
can fix a tine. But having him build a freaking main beam.
Build half a main beam and 2 tines. Okay, fair enough.
No way, man.
Okay, number 3, hog at first light on your first morning of an outfitted hunt in Texas?
Fuck yeah. Why wouldn't I shoot it?
Oh, I don't know. It's just for the same reason. You and I always have
right
this
behind the ear. Safety off, kill switch on, good night.
Well, you and I always have this conversation every year because every freaking year, like clockwork, I feel like opening day of gun season shit. We had it happen this year
with coyotes.
We're always.
What did I do?
And we're always like, oh, should we shoot that coyote? We're messing up our hunt because we only got 3 days on opening weekend. It's like, do we want to be doing a bunch of banging around right now? But
I shot at both of them.
Yeah, you did. Well, so you're shooting the hog.
Yeah.
All right. Well, those weren't as hard for you as I thought. That pretty much takes us to the end. So. Notes. We actually, just today, we ordered the tickets for the launch party. How many did we order?
Enough to fill the venue. This is going to be one of those years where it's a lot because the venue's bigger. But I'm telling you, like, we're going to ask you guys to seriously be conservative. Like, take as many tickets as you need, but don't take more than you need, please. The venue is going to be fantastic. We're looking forward to having it at the Antler, but it's one of those things where we can't order 5 times as many tickets as the Antler holds because we can't have 5 times as many people show up.
We'd be breaking some fire code.
But yeah, we got the tickets ordered. If you're not a part of the Inner Circle, you should be because that's where we're going to release the ticket pickup locations first. And
what's the Inner Circle? That's our Facebook group.
It continues to grow. We appreciate the hell out of you guys being in there. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny because I feel like we find ourselves being, well, it's designed to be that way. We're way more interactive in there than we are with our Facebook page.
Right, yeah.
My moral compass is very conflicted with Facebook. If it wasn't for Last Breath, I don't know if we would have one.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But the Inner Circle really allows us to kind of to put up walls to all the crappy bullshit that Facebook has.
Yes.
So that's where we post all of our stuff. We're still working on those discount codes, guys. We haven't forgot about you. Message us if you have questions with them. Like we have the Badlands code and we have some other codes. But we're working on making that banner for the cover page. We promise we'll get it up. It's just we want to make one that's bulletproof and clad with all the ones that we have. And we got a couple sponsors that are still working on coding those up.
Yep. Last thing before we jump off here, the biggest favor you guys could do is to just tell somebody via word of mouth about our podcast, whether it be the Huntroversies or maybe a little bit of the hunting strategy that we talk about. We really, really appreciate you guys listening. And we will see you next Monday. Hopefully sooner than that. We are releasing a bonus episode because we got a gob or a gobbler.
Mm-hmm.
Or gobblers down.
The other thing I wanted to say too is that Wayne, our taxidermist, ran down to Texas. He stole a couple of our GoPros, and he got some pretty cool footage. The guy wrangled some snakes. It's going to be coming up on a Last Breath Live soon. You want to check that out. The guy has got balls of steel, man.
Yeah, I wouldn't be caught dead
They're
doing that.
big-ass rattlesnakes. We went over there to pick up K2 yesterday.
Yeah, it gives me the willies just thinking about it. He's got like all these rattlesnakes coiled up in a deep freeze. There's like 8 of them. Just nasty looking.
Yeah, so that's just something cool to keep an eye out for, too. But other than that, we appreciate you guys listening. We'll catch you next time.
All right, don't waste it.